Your marriage to me was a lie.
He coldly announced, shattering the happiness I thought I had finally secured right before my eyes. The young and seemingly gentle man I married turned out to be a monster. I couldn't help but wonder why I always seemed to draw the short straw in life, as warm memories of our past flashed through my mind. But I wasn't about to let him have the last laugh. With a heart boiling over with anger and a desire for revenge, I thrust the bouquet I was holding directly in front of his face. "Except, we are legally married," I retorted with a steely resolve. It was my turn to push him into the abyss. "My name is Susan, 32 years old, and an ordinary office lady. When I look back on my life, I wasn't always blessed with my love. I recall with some bitterness my first attempt at love in my teenage years. My older boyfriend tried to push me over the edge just 3 days into our relationship. And when I resisted, he rejected me and scolded me. This harrowing experience left me with a deep-seated fear of men that shadowed my formative years. When my high school career ended and my past wounds began to heal, I began to be drawn to my classmates who seemed to promise me a new start with their bright personalities and kindness. However, this too was a mirage. Because he was always charming and his love for me wasn't just limited to me. It was shared by half the girls in the class. This revelation was a bitter pill to swallow and prompted an immediate severance of ties. During my university days, a ray of hope poured down on me from a senior in the club I belonged to. I thought a fun romance would begin with my senior's confession. Unfortunately, that was a mistake. His true nature revealed his plan to peddle exorbitantly priced vases, relegating me to a mere target of his scam. After graduating, I entered the workforce and worked hard. But the fear of unhappy relationships loomed large, each encounter marred by its own set of problems. My natural tendency to believe too easily, fail easily, reach out to those in need, and give my all to those I care about was often exploited. Friends pointed out that this very trait was the root cause of my predicament. In this way, I vowed to myself that even if there was no one by my side, I would stand up with the will I had cultivated over many years and devote myself to my work without giving up. I made up my mind and went ahead with my work. However, the fateful encounter came suddenly.
"Susan, are you single?"
"Yes, but..." I was caught off guard by this direct question from none other than David. He is a 25-year-old man who recently transferred to my workplace. As a new employee, I was appointed to be his mentor and approached the job with a sense of responsibility. But for some reason he started to take a liking to me.
"Then why don't we go on a date next time?"
"No, thanks. I didn't want to date men anymore." But David didn't give up. David kept finding reasons to ask me out, persistently suggesting,
"Just once. If it doesn't work out, I'll give up."
We had worked together, which meant spending a fair amount of time together. Although our acquaintance wasn't long, I witnessed his dedication and hard work up close. Despite having thought I was done with romance, David's earnest attempts gradually won over my heart. "Fine, but it's just this once." His bright, happy response made me unwittingly smile. Yielding to his enthusiasm, I agreed to a single date. We watched a movie and had dinner together, enjoying a wholesome and delightful outing. I had a great time, I told David, to which he earnestly replied,
"I know we said just once, but can I hope for another date?"
"Yes, of course." I smiled. Months passed, and my relationship with David, who was 7 years my junior, flourished. Although I often found myself treating him due to the age difference, his kindness and the joy of our shared time outweighed any concern. We even planned future travels together, looking forward to more wonderful moments. As days filled with happiness swiftly turned to the end of the year, my mother, Margaret, called, "Susan, you're coming home for the end of the year, right?" I'm not sure yet,"
I'm hoping for some good news about marriage this year.
she hinted, concerned about my age. In our small town, being unmarried at my age was uncommon. Though I tried not to dwell on it, I wondered about David's thoughts on marriage. He seemed in no rush, despite our age difference. On our next trip, I mustered the courage to broach the subject of marriage subtly. "David, what are your thoughts on marriage?" I ventured. Surprised, he asked.
Do you want to get married?
"Well, I am 32, and if you're okay with it, maybe we could consider it," I suggested, opening up about our future together. I nervously glanced at David, feeling a mix of anticipation and fear. To my relief, he greeted me with a wide, heartwarming smile that seemed to chase away all my worries.
You know, Susan, I might not have as much money as you. And I'm worried I might cause you more troubles than you deserve,
he said, revealing his insecurities with a sincerity that touched me deeply. That doesn't matter to me at all, I'm here to support us both. It was a truth that lay at the foundation of our relationship. I took care of the financial aspects. While David enriched my life with a love so profound, it transcended any material wealth. "So, you're saying you'll marry me?" I teased, a mix of jest and serious intent in my tone.
Getting a proposal from you, Susan? That's beyond my wildest dreams. Of course, I'll marry you,
David replied, his eyes alight with excitement and love. "Really?" I asked, a surge of happiness and disbelief coursing through me. Without a word, David drew me into a tender embrace. A gesture that spoke volumes of his commitment and affection. From that moment on, our wedding plans seemed to progress with an ease that felt like destiny. Given that David's parents had passed away, we planned to visit my hometown at the year's end to share our joyful news with my parents. They were thrilled at the prospect of welcoming David, a young man of great promise, into our family. It felt as though I was finally able to do something truly meaningful for my parents, filling me with an immense sense of happiness. But what truly elevated my joy was an unexpected present from David.
This is for you, Susan,
he said, handing me a thin envelope with a hint of mystery in his smile. "What's this?" I asked, curiosity piqued.
Open it and see,
he encouraged. Inside, I found a marriage certificate, already signed by David, which took my breath away. "This." My voice faltered, emotions overwhelming me as tears blurred my vision, realizing the depth of his gesture.
It'll be complete once you sign it,
he said softly, his voice laden with emotion. This surprise, this profound act of love, marked a pivotal moment in my life, signifying a turn in my fortunes in love for the better. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice thick with tears. After adding my signature to the document, we promised to submit it together, symbolizing our united path forward. With the successful meeting with my parents behind us, we joyously moved on to planning our wedding, embarking on this new chapter of our lives together with hearts full of hope and love. David wanted our wedding to be small, just our close family, and that seemed easy enough. But despite such simple planning, we ran around like a SWAT team planning a wedding. There was a guest list that seemed to grow like a well-watered weed. Party favors that had to be just right, and of course, an epic quest for the perfect wedding dress. In that quest, he was more than just a groom. He was a kid who worked in a candy store and his eyes lit up every time we considered dresses.
Don't you think it's more beautiful this way?
He said, and eventually we found a classic pure white wedding dress that looks like it was made just for us. As the wedding approached and David's temporary assignment ended, we were looking for a fresh start. That's when I started looking for my first apartment. Would you be happy if I showed you the apartment contract? Since David was young, he was, to be honest, a bit financially unreliable. The reason he hesitated to look for a house was probably because he was worried about money. Fortunately, I had decided to live independently and had some money saved up. I wanted to give back to David and show him how much his happiness meant to me. But that desire led me to a moment that changed everything.
What do you think?
At that moment, I heard a familiar voice coming from the wall.
"Looks good. Shall we try it?"
The couple next door was having a lively conversation. My curiosity was piqued and I inched closer, but my heart stopped. David was there, definitely there, and he wasn't alone. A woman he had never seen before was with him.
I can't wait to start living together.
He said to her in a voice that was a mixture of excitement and tenderness.
But what about your older girlfriend?
She asked in a playful yet probing tone.
Oh, her? She's not actually my girlfriend, just my wallet.
David replied with a disdainful laugh.
That's terrible. But I'm grateful to this purse girl for giving me such a fun time.
The woman laughed. They laughed at my expenses and joked that I was just a source of funds. It wasn't just my heart that was pounding. It felt like it was trying to escape from my chest as I fled the apartment, the revelation of David's betrayal echoing in my mind. There was no doubt about that. The man I was planning a future with was planning a future without me. Did I ever make a mistake by choosing to marry him? I mused quietly to myself as I carefully opened an envelope that had been safeguarded for what seemed like an eternity. Within it lay our marriage certificate, bearing our names clearly printed, a testament to the legality and reality of our commitment. The mere thought of him being unfaithful was something I couldn't bear to entertain. With our wedding fast approaching, disbelief became a temporary solace. However, turning a blind eye was not something my conscience would allow. With a heavy heart but resolved spirit, I embarked on a quest to uncover the truth behind my husband's actions. The discovery was nothing short of devastating. It turned out my husband had not one, but 3 other women in his life. Among them was a woman I had inadvertently encountered in our apartment building. The rest were young, each stunningly beautiful in her own right. Why? Why didn't he choose just me? I questioned, drowning in a sea of sorrow. My parents were due to come from my hometown for the wedding. I wanted to spare them any sadness at this joyous occasion we had all looked forward to. Yet, a seething anger bubbled within me, unparalleled to any I had felt before. Out of all the men I had crossed paths with, he was the absolute worst, his actions unforgivable. Driven by a newfound determination, I decided it was time to act. On a day that marked 2 weeks before our wedding, we sat down to finalize our arrangements. That day was dedicated to reviewing the overarching plan for our ceremony. Once this was concluded, all that would be left was to eagerly await the day itself. It's been a challenging journey, but we've finally made it to this point.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you in your dress, Susan.
He shared, his voice laced with anticipation. The wedding is something I've been looking forward to as well. I echoed his sentiment. Indeed, we're about to become husband and wife. He added thoughtfully.
Let's promise to always cherish and be kind to one another.
I proposed, my words met with a warm smile from him. And so, 2 weeks later, on the day of our wedding, we made our way to the venue, ready to embark on a new chapter together. Filled with hope for what our future as a married couple would bring. David was taken to a separate room by venue staff and was filled with anticipation. My makeup was finished, and as a final touch, I changed into a pure white dress, symbolizing the beginning of a new chapter. David watched the groom walk back towards me in his perfect tuxedo. It was a picture of grace and promise. David, let's make today an unforgettable day. Then David started laughing quietly. Unexpectedly, David's attitude changed.
I cannot stand it any longer.
He confessed, there was a strange tension in his voice. What do you mean? While I froze, David seemed very amused and started holding his stomach and laughing out loud.
Our married life, it was all a lie.
His words were like a cold drop of reality, and I froze in place. The laughter that followed was cruel and emotionless.
There's no way I'd marry an old lady like you.
He scoffed, his gaze piercing me with a mix of mockery and contempt. What are you saying? I managed to ask, each word filled with disbelief.
Isn't it obvious? You were a pawn in my game. You wanted to marry me. You blindly obeyed, and you fulfilled my desires without question.
Maybe it was all about money? I whispered, deep sadness seeping into my heart.
Of course.
David said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to bear being with you. But I have to admit, I was looking forward to today.
My mind struggled to comprehend his words. What do you mean?
I wanted to see you fall from grace. I wanted to see your world crumble around you.
He admitted, a cold satisfaction in his voice. The man in front of me looked nothing like the David I thought I knew.
From the moment we met, I could tell you were an easily manipulated and desperate woman. I played the role of a devoted boyfriend, but it was all to get you to this moment. I want to capture your despair and share it with my girlfriend.
Girlfriend? So you admitted to cheating on me?
Why do you care? This is my life. And we're done here. This isn't cheating. It's over. Goodbye.
He declared and turned to leave. But I stood my ground and was determined. Then I will divorce you and ask for alimony. David shook his head in amazement.
Divorce? Alimony? Ha! We haven't even had a wedding yet. You're here, and I'm still single.
I remembered the irony, laughed and continued. She waved the bouquet in her arms and pointed it straight at him. Do you really think we're not married if we don't have a wedding? We actually are. Confusion crossed his face, and as he processed my words, a mixture of disbelief and reality dawned on his face. You don't seem to understand what I mean, so let me explain. I declared myself ready to unravel the story that brought us to this turbulent moment. The turning point came one fateful day when she secretly inspected his apartment and discovered David's secret affair. I need your help. The destination is a lawyer's office. I couldn't bear the thought of repeating my past betrayal and was determined to avoid it at all costs. I poured out my heart and tearfully detailed my ordeal to my lawyer. The lawyer answered calmly and resolutely.
Please submit your marriage registration immediately.
I followed his advice and hurried home and went straight to City Hall with my marriage registration. Signing that document was a moment of pure bliss and ideally symbolized the promise we were supposed to solemnize together on our wedding day. That memory alone moved me, and when I thought about it, tears filled my eyes. David was probably enjoying manipulation behind the scenes, toying with my affections with little regard for the consequences. If that was his game, I was ready to counter with a move that would ensure he faced the consequences of his actions. When I finished reminiscing, David had a look of utter shock on his face. A man faced with a reality he never expected. In essence, we are bonded together, for better or for worse.
This is a scam.
He screamed, panicked, and his complexion changed.
I had no intention of marrying you. You can't decide on your own and submit a marriage registration. It's invalid.
Oh. That's strange. The recorder clicked into play. It was the device that held evidence of his complicity and determined his fate. We will soon be a couple.
Let's vow to support each other and live in harmony no matter what.
But as the reality of his determination echoed through the room, there was a clear change in his face. He looked pale, as if all the blood had been drained from him. And beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, indicating that he was shaken. You were going to marry me, weren't you? My voice is steady, but filled with an undercurrent of betrayal. Seeking confirmation of the promise I once swore. His response was hesitant and stammered.
Well, that's...
You're standing here in a tuxedo trying to make a decision and you're confused right now? There's a good chance you could be charged with marriage fraud. In the midst of our heated exchange, someone stepped forward who exemplified calmness and authority. Please allow me to introduce you. I say this as I reveal my allies on this unexpected battlefield. This is Michael, the General Counsel. Looking at his real lawyer badge, the remaining color appears to drain from his face, testifying to the gravity of the situation now unfolding before him.
Aren't you ashamed to submit to such a vile act? What a vile act!
He lashed out in anger and despair, trying to shake my resolve. Huh? But actually, I'm married. I fought back, revealing a twist in the story that brought us together but set the stage for the final act. I quickly handed him the divorce papers, symbolizing the end of our short-lived relationship. But be prepared, this marriage will soon be dissolved. I swear my voice is a mixture of sadness and determination. His reaction was swift, with a mixture of anger and resignation. As he signed the papers and removed his ceremonial clothing, a clear sign of surrender.
This is ridiculous. Don't expect any compensation from me.
He declared this a last stand against the inevitable. It's your choice, but be prepared to go to court. Undeterred by his defiance, I responded that I was prepared to pursue justice through legal means. Michael speaks with confidence not only as my lawyer, but also as my defense attorney.
Given the sanctity of marriage, your actions clearly violate the oath of allegiance. Previous litigation has shown little tolerance for such violations, and if you have any chance of winning, is low.
His professionalism, he says, stands in stark contrast to the emotional turmoil of our personal failures. With a slight smile, he revealed a truth that shook the very foundation of his defense.
It appears that you have been unfaithful to Susan. Contrary to your claims, your parents are alive and well, and hold influential positions at companies with whom we have close ties.
His reaction is shock and horror, the realization that his web of lies is unraveling.
How do you know that?
He cried, his revelation upsetting and exposing the precarious nature of his social standing and how hard he had worked to keep up appearances.
Faced with a legal battle, it is very important to understand your opponent. Now, what will you choose? Proceeding to court. The truth of your actions will be known to everyone, including your parents. It will be known.
I saw a glimpse of the potential consequences of his choices and warned him. Defeated, he collapses, a gesture of surrender to overwhelming evidence and possible social humiliation.
Okay, I'll pay the alimony. Just don't go to court.
He begs to be freed from the consequences of his own actions. Please note that alimony includes not only compensation for emotional distress, but also reimbursement for financial waste and wedding expenses. I make it clear that I will ensure that justice is served in an authentic manner. In the aftermath, as I return to my life, free of the bonds that bound me to him, I reflect on the journey that led me here. No longer trapped in a relationship built on deception, I move forward, embracing the promise of a hopeful future and authentic connection. Our chapter is over. It's a story of love, betrayal, and redemption, and a reminder of the strength and resilience of the human spirit in its pursuit of truth. David had been juggling his job and a side gig to pay for the alimony I demanded. The women in his life vanished overnight, their absence marked by the depletion of the funds they enjoyed, funds that were, ironically, obtained from me at David's behest. With the money gone, they deemed David unnecessary, a harsh reality he had to face. Though I hadn't taken any direct action, the truth eventually reached David's parents, and he was severely reprimanded. Now, he lives a life devoid of freedom, under the watchful eyes of his parents and the demands of his jobs. This ordeal forced me to confront, yet again, my unfortunate luck with men. Why do I have such terrible luck with men? I pondered, deeply disheartened by the recent events. The aftermath of this episode left me deflated, officially making me a divorcee, albeit in pursuit of retribution. But as the saying goes, when one door closes, another opens.
You are too vulnerable to be left alone.
Michael, my lawyer, remarked, extending a comforting hand towards me.
I'll protect you.
He promised, his hand warm and reassuring. A glimmer of hope sparked within me, suggesting that perhaps a beautiful romance could be on the horizon this time around.